Hi, I'm John Ogilvy. I'm a Government of Canada cloud architect, a contractor. I'm helping various departments, 8 in the last year, figure out how to get established in the cloud and how to move workloads there. And this deck here is based on some work I did for Treasury Board several years ago, which was designed to help people understand which workloads we're going to slide into the cloud easily and which ones we're going to present problems. So this is based on the idea of a scorecard, and there's no right answer. It just points out things that are going to be challenging and things that would suggest you should move to the cloud. First question that I ask business users is the system we're talking about, how old is it? What hardware generation is it? The cloud is based on the idea of virtual servers, and physical mainframes, old financial applications and so on are just not going to be an easy lift. Those should go into an enterprise data center where SSC will physically lift the box and put it on a truck and put it in the data center if that's what it takes. And physical servers on your premises are probably going to work. The best, of course, is if you're running them as virtual servers because they'll move easily. Operating systems are a similar story. The cloud is based on commodity computing, which is the latest Linux and Windows. And if that's what you're doing, you're not going to have any challenges. If you're doing older versions of either of those two things, or heaven forbid you're doing mainframes or Mac OS or Unix, which is not Linux, then you're going to have a heavy lift. On a very similar basis, if the architecture of your application is web-based, then you're going to fit neatly into the cloud. If it's a client-server situation, it can be made to fit. Your desktop client is going to talk to the cloud using proprietary protocols. It's going to be some extra effort on the part of people like myself documenting that and getting security approval. If it's a terminal-based system, well, shame on you. This one is a killer. If your application is standalone, it will fit neatly into the cloud. If it relies heavily on existing on-premises systems on the GC network, the big ones are things like GC Docs, the document repository, or SAP for financials, or PeopleSoft for HR. If you rely on those things, cloud is going to be problematic because we don't have a good cloud to ground solution, ground being on premises. There are solutions in the pipeline, but it's a lot of work. I'm talking about secure cloud to ground, SCED. Now the next point is about the application that you're trying to move. So if your application is a brand new application, something that you're going to write from scratch, well, the tools available in the cloud are going to be very exciting for you. You'll be able to do all kinds of very quick agile development. If you have an existing application, I begin to wonder whether it wouldn't be easier just to lift it into an enterprise data center. So the other aspect of this is contractual. If you have existing applications, SSC is legally required to support them and wishes to move them to one of their data centers in EDC for more supportability. If you come up with a net new application, there's a business requirements document. You are going to have to describe your requirements to SSC. A number of months later, you'll get a quote, and you'll be paying for the migration and hosting and the ongoing support. So, custom versus off the shelf is about commercial products, especially older commercial products that may not like having their environment virtualized and may not like the latest versions of operating systems and libraries and so on. Cloud shines when you want to do custom code and you do want to use the latest versions of everything. And the next point about static versus dynamic is really talking about how actively you are modifying this application. If you are running a major system for CRA, and this is something you update very carefully once a year, then an enterprise data center will suit you well, because they'd like to lock things down if current changes. If you are doing things in a bit more agile framework, and you're making regular updates, that enterprise data center is going to be an uncomfortable fit, because they do not like you making daily updates. It's a production environment. So the cloud would be a great dev environment. Who's using your application? If it's internal government, then the EDC is fine. It may even be better because, like I mentioned earlier, we have the links to the existing government systems. But if it's external, well, it's actually a lot of effort on the security side and the networking side to take your application at an EDC and expose it to the public. It involves demilitarized zones and many meetings. If you put it into the cloud is on the internet and you're there already. So public-facing applications are a good fit for the cloud. If you have partners who are coming into the application, it's a bit of a mix, but it's still easier to give them access to the cloud than to negotiate with SSC about giving them access to the enterprise data center. You have to be careful about the wording of this one, administration. If you put your workload into an enterprise data center, it is going to be well managed by professionals. They are not going to give you the keys. They're not going to give you the root accounts. They're going to manage it. That's professional management. That's fine if you're running a giant production CRA application and you don't plan to make any adjustments to it. If you're more nimble, more agile, and you're used to administering these applications yourself, and I've seen a lot of research applications that fit into this, then the cloud is going to feel a lot more comfortable because you can have complete control, restricted only by what your departmental cloud folks want to retain for themselves. So there are possibilities in the cloud of having an application that only runs when you start it up, which is a bit perverse. But there are research and modeling and analytical and I'm sure other applications that might run a few hours a month. And in the cloud you can do that. You can't do that in an enterprise data center. The assumption there, everything is production. It runs 24/7. So think hard about what is the actual demand for your application. The middle ground there is I need an application for internal users that only runs during business hours. And you should be able to save quite a bit of money by putting that in the cloud and turning it off when the last person leaves the building. It's a strange thought. On a similar note, if your application is one like the CRA, where it has huge demand in the spring when people are filing their taxes, then you're going to be happier in the cloud because the cloud scales up automatically or automagically, and you can increase your capacity by a factor of 10 or 100 just by spending some money. If you're an enterprise data center, the hardware that you have is all you've got, and you have to probably plan it to handle your largest load, so most of the year your capacity is underused. So if your application is peaky or bursty, then look harder at the cloud. I forget my numbering here. This is the 12 of 12. SSC puts a lot of work into setting up an application in their data center, and they expect it to be there for several years. I've seen their contracts structured for a 3-year term. If your application is going to be needed for the duration of a contract, or for the duration of a short-term program, or short-term government, whatever, then the cloud looks nicer because you actually can turn it off at will with no penalties. Whereas you're making a commitment if you're putting things into an enterprise data center. If your application is long-term, EDC is fine. If it's shorter term or you're not sure, then the cloud makes more sense.